Hello and welcome to another episode of Ask SoulBird, and today I have another question, and today's question was, what watercolour paper is your most favourite? So, as a watercolour artist, I am always on the hunt for very good watercolour paper. And so I have tried quite a few different brands. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you just a few of the watercolour papers that I have used that I've found really, really good. Now, one thing to start with, I'm a watercolour artist who uses a lot of water. That sounds like something really obvious to say, but some artists don't use as much water as I do. Now, I'm one of those artists that like to slosh on the water, and I keep sloshing it on. So the one thing for me that's really, really important is that the paper is thick enough. So always I will be using watercolour paper that is 300 GSM or thicker. It has to be that. Anything thinner, it won't be able to hold the amount of water that I use in my paintings. So let me get going. So number one, this is, I actually can't remember where I got this from, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. It's called Botanical Ultra Smooth. Now, this wasn't my most favourite. Why I'm sharing it with you is because what I did find that was really lovely about it is that it was and is ultra smooth. Obviously it's going to look like just white paper to you, but it is very smooth. Second thing to note is I always use hot pressed paper. That means that you will have this smooth coating, so that if you paint with very, very fine details, it will come out on the paper. If you're preferring to paint with more abstract shapes and forms, then maybe cold pressed will be okay for you because it has more of a textured surface. Botanical artists need hot pressed paper simply because they are always painting with such fine details. So this is why I thought I'd give this paper a go. And I only have one sheet left of this. So you can see I really enjoyed this paper. Plus it had a very white shade to it. And this of course gave a crisper colour to my paintings. So that is number one. The next, my next favourite, which is probably my second favourite, is the Bockingford block. This is done by St Cuthbert's Mill. Again, this is a hot pressed watercolour paper, which means that it's smooth. Now, if you haven't explored many different papers, the one good thing about buying a block is that it is created as a block, so you can paint straight onto the block here, and once the painting is complete, you simply can pull this up round the edges. And the one good thing about painting on a block means that when you are using lots of water, the paper will of course have a little bit of ripple to it, but when you use the block, it stops that from happening quite so much. So this is another of my favourites. And the other thing that actually I prefer in comparison to the whiteness of the botanical paper, this has a more of a natural creamy shade to it. And personally, I find that I actually prefer the way that the colours come out when I'm using this particular shade of paper. So that is Bockingford, the block. You don't need to have the block, but the paper itself is excellent. And this again is 300 GSM. It's acid free and archival. And finally, it is actually done by the same company. It's St Cuthbert's Mill, but this is probably my most favourite, number one paper to use. Saunders and Waterford. This is hot pressed. Again, it's white paper and it is 100% cotton. It is acid free, archival. Again, the hot press means that it's smooth. This is my most favorite watercolor paper to use. I have not found one that I prefer more. This is the one that I've been using for years. And of course, every so often I try a new block, a new brand, but I find that I often come back to this one. And of course, over the years, although I've said I usually use hot press paper, but if you are someone who prefers to work with textured paper, then try the same brand, but one that is cold pressed. You can see here the knot is cold pressed, and that has a much more textured surface to it, which is still beautiful. But for me and the type of artwork that I create, I do prefer the hot pressed. So there, my darlings, this is my number one. Then going to Bockingford, and then still nice, but not quite my top one, but still works very well, is the Botanical Ultra Smooth. So those are my 3 top papers.